guys, it's Christine Karlovic, and we're back today talking about the 350 megawatt Rosalen Solar Project that's proposed in Rosengalen, Wayne County, New York. We have with us today Maz Trieste of Trieste Associates. She's out of Saratoga Springs, New York, and has been working with development companies like EDF for over 20 years to bring communities and developers together. Maz, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Christine. Pleasure to be here.
You know, in our last few podcasts, we talked with Kevin Campbell about some of the benefits of solar and common community concerns to the host communities. Tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up providing public outreach plans for developers.
So it all started when I got involved with a Superfund hazardous waste site that happened to be in my backyard in Saratoga Springs, New York. So I started a volunteer organization with some local individuals that I met just because I was so concerned about the Superfund site. And we actually, 7 years later, made quite an impact on the actual cleanup of the site. We obtained the $50,000 grant from EPA that was offered for technical assistance for communities, which was super helpful for us because we didn't understand the technical data coming from the site. So with all of that, we were able to have a huge impact on the cleanup alternatives for that site. So as a result of that, I got to testify on 3 occasions to Congress during Superfund reauthorization. And we talked about the impact of citizens working together in a community and accomplishing really great achievements to basically help solve the problems that we had with toxic waste contamination. So for this, it showed me firsthand the great importance of building public outreach and community joining together to solve a problem. And so that's why I started my business doing grassroots organizing.
That's great. How do you get from working on Superfund sites to solar projects?
Yeah, good question. So as a result of me being an environmentalist, I started this business offering grassroots organizing just to help make sure that our sites in the toxic waste part of the world were cleaned up properly, because I felt those most at-risk communities had the most to say about what was happening to them. So I went to the first community that I've ever seen a wind project in Madison County, New York, which had a very large turbine, operating turbines that were GE turbines. And so I fell in love with this alternative that was producing power with no emissions. And I said to myself, well, this is a big solution to the pollution we've been causing using typical fossil fuels such as coal to power our electric grid. So, you know, it's just amazing. We don't really think about what these contaminants end up doing to our air and our waterways, and they remain in our soils, like coal tar has remained in all of our soils that have these manufacturing plants since the early 1900s, and they contaminate our streams and stay there unless they're cleaned up properly. So I developed a little niche for community organizing, and renewable energy was, for me, the solution. So I really got into wind power at the time because wind was really coming out strong in New York. And, you know, many, many years later, I've been working this for 20 years now, promoting renewable energy. Solar power is now hitting the ground running. Solar is so much more advanced than it was early on when I started working with renewable energy. So I can honestly say it makes me really proud to work with renewable energy companies such as EDF Renewables. It's a wonderful team. We're doing a lot of work to produce early outreach plans, which I totally believe in, and so does the company. And the environmental community is also very much backing this because of the benefits this type of alternative has for emission-free power that offers everyone, each and every one of us, an opportunity to produce something that's creative, and you can actually have an impact on the environment in a positive way. And you can look your children and your grandchildren in the eyes and say, hey, we work to help this happen in New York.
I love solution to pollution. That's great. That should be your tagline. So how is it that you actually promote community involvement in solar projects, and ones that are, large scale, such as the Rosalen Solar Project, being developed in the towns of Rose and Galen?
Yes, surely. Well, over the many years I've worked on this, communities have very common concerns regarding renewable energy because it's new. They're not used to seeing these types of large-scale projects, in their backyards. So we have to really get in early and address concerns very early on, and that's the key. So people are pretty much understanding the technology and the impacts that technology may or may not have directly on them and their properties and their view sheds, all of that. And so with large scale projects, it's also very, very important to understand the many benefits that these projects offer and how it really impacts everyone in a positive way. So we obviously have landowners who lease their property for the solar panels. They have a new income source. And as most of you know, the farmers of upstate New York are really, really on their knees, especially post-COVID. There's a lot of demands on them and the resources are scarce. So having new income for their land to be used for solar panels is critical to maintain our farmlands right now, especially. So we have that, and then we have millions of dollars that go into the county budgets, the town budgets, and the school budgets combined. So let's say for the Rosalen project, for example, we're predicting $1 million annually during the operation for this project, and that gets dispersed amongst these budgets. It's really important. I mean, we know their school budgets are they're suffering too. And this is something that actually helps keep our property values intact because most people want to make sure their schools are well equipped. So the solar project creates a whole lot of securities for the communities that are most directly impacted. And we have to get that information out. So you may say, okay, so how do we get this critical information out? A big part of the plan is to talk to individuals one-on-one. Obviously with COVID, we can't face-to-face visit people, but we can certainly use social media in a big way. This podcast is a way of reaching people to help answer their questions and get them to understand these projects. We're doing webinars. We are, out there trying to get Facebooks and other materials out as quick as we can as the projects are developing, so people are up to speed with all of the the project gains and the studies being made, etc. So this is really important time for everyone to come together. There's a whole new wave of alternative power in New York right now that people can really benefit from, and it's important for us to use the tools to get people to understand this. And neighbor to neighbor is probably the best way too, because who do you trust most in your community? Is the people who live there. So a big part of what we do is really trying to build on neighbors talking to each other so they understand the facts about the project.
So Maz, tell me about what we would say or what you would say to somebody that doesn't support the project. Because in the community, you're going to get a little bit of folks that do support the project, and you may get a little bit of folks that don't support the project. So what do we say to those folks that do not support the project?
Well, look, I think that for the most part, people that are scared and they don't understand the technology and they believe, for example, that panels, for example, what I'm hearing is the concerns that panels are toxic and there's property values concerns and all of the typical concerns we always get for renewable energy projects, just basically because they don't want to look at them. I can't convince somebody, no one can convince somebody of a view shed issue. And that's it within the eye of the beholder, right? What does that represent to you? Does it represent emission-free power, or does it represent something that's an eyesore and you don't want to simply look at it? But I can correct, and we can get the facts out by correcting the wrong information that they're receiving, and maybe that will change their mindset because they'll have the correct information from independent sources, that the scientists or the people that are doing the studies, the birds and the hunting and the issues that may be of concern to those opposing. Once they get the true facts, they may change their minds. But like I said, there's a vocal minority for the most part in every community, and they will speak out loudly and early at most of our projects. And what we have to do is get the majority of people that really want to understand. And they're the best sources to convince people who are opposed to begin with of the facts. And you can change people's minds if we have the right voices presenting those facts.
So Maz, what are some things that people can do to get involved in the project, people in the community, as the Rosalen project moves ahead?
Yeah, so what I like to say to people, and this is like the most important message that really matters, is that your voice has such an impact on these projects. And you're actually, as you support projects of this nature, you're safeguarding projects because you're creating an environment in your community that's basically saying, let's go ahead with this. Let's all partner and make sure this happens for all the right reasons. And your elected officials need to hear that. They need to know that their electorate is behind them on this. And you may think that, Albany has control over all this, but not necessarily. I mean, we really want, as EDF, as a company, we really want the municipalities to have as much support as possible from their residents. So what can be done is, once you get informed and you understand what's really there for us to all benefit from, you can write letters to the editor, explain that to your neighbors through the local paper and the local media outlets. You can get to your town board meetings. Right now, I don't know, with social distancing, how that's going to come about, but we can certainly use the ways and the means of writing to your local representatives, calling them, emailing them, letting them know you support the projects and the environmental benefits that are being created for the future, how important that is for the children of your community. And there are many other benefits, such as jobs. This project in Rosalen will create up to 300 construction jobs, and we hope to hire mostly local people. There's a lot of training involved with solar. So there's many reasons for the community to showcase to their representatives why they really are in support of these projects. And it helps them build zoning codes that allow for very safe and manageable developments that everyone could live with and enjoy in the future. So letting your voice be known is the best thing you can do.
We're almost out of time, but is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we close out of the podcast?
There's one little thing I would love to share, and that is we have in New York right now there's a network of folks out there that support solar power specifically, in particular large-scale solar. They call themselves USES, United Solar Energy Supporters. And there's a website. It's called usesnewyork.org. And you can go to that website. There's a ton of really great information there, and it's created as a separate, independent entity of information for the public and for New Yorkers to get onto. Right now, USES has been creating webinars pretty much monthly post-COVID-19, and the webinars address specific subject matters regarding solar development and the technology and what's involved. And you can go on the website and see the webinars. They're live webinars, and there's Q&A at the end of them for participants to answer questions from those who registered. It's very successful as far as getting a lot of backing from individuals that are hosting projects, proposed projects. There's scientists and town representatives and labor folks and all kinds of farmers and just families and students that are getting involved in this network. So I highly advise people to go there. It's separate from the developers. It's just a resource of information. Again, it's usesnewyork.org.
Wow, that's great information. That sounds like a fantastic initiative. Well, Maz, thanks for joining us today and sharing some of your insight and your expertise.
My pleasure, Christine. Thank you.
And listeners, stay tuned for our next podcast on June 30th. The topic is yet to be determined. If you have any questions about the Rosalen Solar Project, please email newyorksolar@edf-re.com, or you can give us a call at 833-333-7369. You can also visit the project site at www.rosalensolar.com. And that's all for today. Until the next time, we'll talk to you then.